Let's open our Bibles tonight to the book of Genesis, chapter 29. We're going to read one verse, verse 32. And she conceived again, verse 32. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, Surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. There's a lot said about this young man named Reuben. There is more said about him than many other Bible characters that we've looked at. In looking at his life, there's one major blot on his life that we will look at. But most of the passages portray Reuben in a positive light. A lot of people like to run to his major sin that he committed and forget that all the other references to him are all positive. I'm going to look at his major sin, but then I want to look at scenes from the rest of his life and see what we can learn from this young man. And I use the word young very literally. Let's go back and look at his birth and his early years. He was the firstborn son of Jacob. Now, if you recall the story, Jacob had fled from his home after he tricked his dad. He fled over to his cousin's country, which was way across the country, fled over there, found his cousins, and decided that he would work for his cousin. He agreed. He fell in love with Laban's daughter, Rachel, and so he said, I tell you what, I will work 7 years, and at the end of that 7 years, you will give me Rachel in marriage. Aren't you glad we don't do that today? I would have had to quit after about 1.5 years, 2 years. Actually, the first time I met my father-in-law, I would have never come back. I would have left, gone back to Tennessee, and still been there probably. You had to know my father-in-law. But Jacob worked for 7 years just for the opportunity to marry Rachel. On the wedding night, his father-in-law tricked him. Instead of marrying Rachel, the next morning he wakes up and looks over, and instead of Rachel, lo and behold, there is Leah, Rachel's older sister. Talk about marrying the wrong woman. He did, literally. Can you imagine turning over and it's like, who are you? I'm Leah. That's not who I married. Well, it is. So he chewed his father-in-law out a little bit. And then he agreed, give me Rachel now. And in exchange for giving me Rachel now, I will work 7 more years to pay back Rachel's indebtedness. Soon after he and Leah were married, Reuben was born. He was the first child. And I tried to figure it out as best as I could, assuming that Leah became pregnant within the first 3 months of marriage and went the full 9 months. Reuben would have been about 6 years old when his dad married Rachel. Let that soak in. He was the first. Jacob worked 7 years. So the oldest he could have been would have been 6 years old at the end of the first 7 years. And then he saw his dad marry Rachel and have children. Well, didn't have children yet, but he saw that exchange. Now, my dad has 2 wives. Well, Rachel could not have children. So then Reuben, who would have been somewhere around 7, 8, 9 years of age, watched as his Rachel gave her maid servant to Jacob to bear children through her for her. Does that make sense? Rachel gave her maid and said, "Here, go into her, have children by her, and I will raise them and as my child." Well, Leah saw what was going on. So she then took her maid and gave her maid to Jacob to have children by. And here's young Reuben. By that time, he could have been 10, 11 years old maybe. And he sees his mama give his daddy to another woman. Then he sees her give her maid to his daddy. Then he sees his mom give her maid to his daddy. And I couldn't help but wonder what was going on in his mind. What was he thinking about? He was exposed to bigamy on a major scale at around 8 to 10 years of age. Now, I'm going to make some assumptions, but my assumptions are not just mere pulling ideas out of the air. From early childhood, he was exposed to a dysfunctional family. From the time as young as he could probably remember. His own sin later, I believe very possibly, could have been influenced by seeing his dad and the games that his mom and his stepmom and his, maidens and all of the shenanigans that went on with all of that had to have had a very negative influence on young Reuben. I say I don't just pull that out of the air, because over the years I have dealt with situations very similar. It wasn't, Dad, in America we don't practice polygamy, but where Dad had this lady on the side, this lady on the side, this lady on the side. Sometimes the child would walk in and catch Daddy with one of these other women that he met. And I have seen firsthand how that exposure influences that young child. Parents, never, ever underestimate how much influence you have over your children, even when they're very young. I was grown. I think I was married by that time, or at least I was in college. And I was with Mom and Dad one time, and we began talking, and I said, I remember something. I don't remember how old I was, but I began telling Mom what I remembered. Now, Mom's dead, so you can't verify this, but Mom said, there's no way possible that you remember that. And I described in vivid detail, right down to microscopic details that I remembered just as plain could be. And so I told it to Mom, and she said, son, you were only 2 years old when we lived in that particular house. And I can remember things in that house just as vivid as if they happened yesterday. 2 years old, I was already establishing memories of growing up. Never underestimate the influence that you have over your children, even at a young age. I remember hearing a doctor one time, someone asked him, when should I start reading to my child? As soon as he's born? He said, as soon as you conceived and know you have conceived, start reading to him. Start singing to him. Because even in the womb, they hear, they can understand, and they can maybe not remember it, but it will have an influence on them. Then we come to chapter 35, his big sin. In 35:22, it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. In other words, he decided to get in with one of his dad's many wives. By this time, based on my calculations, he would have been somewhere around 19 years of age. His morality would have already been formed and twisted by his father, his mother, his stepmother, and their maiden servants. A child's morality may not manifest itself immediately, but many times down the road, what they have seen and heard as a child becomes manifested in that child's life. Because of his sin, he lost the birthright. As the oldest child, he was entitled to the birthright, which means he got double what everyone else got. He lost his birthright because of his sin. And in chapter 49, as Jacob lay dying, he called each of his kids in and gave them a blessing, or at least what to expect in their future. But instead of a blessing, when he got to Reuben, he gave a very strong rebuke against his son because of the sin that he committed in his late teens, he got rebuked rather than a blessing, in addition to losing the birthright. And I'll come back to that when I make the application to us. Now, on the brighter side, looking at Reuben, Joseph was the firstborn child of Rachel, who was the girl that Jacob loved to begin with. She could not have children for years and years. And finally, after much prayer, much intercession, she bare a son, and they called his name Joseph. He was the baby. How many of you are the baby in your family? Yeah, I was the baby in my family. It was so nice. As the baby, you get pampered. You get extra care. You know, my brother, go on outside and play. Can I go out and play? No, son. You need to stay inside and be careful and be safe. He was the baby of the family until later on when Benjamin came along. Because he was the firstborn of beloved Rachel, he became Jacob's favorite. Now, I've got one son who loves to tell everybody that he was our favorite child growing up. And I have to speak up and say, we did not have favorites. Yeah, I know you have to say that, but I know I really was your favorite. Joseph really was Jacob's favorite. Jacob made him a coat of many colors, a sign of royalty, a sign of authority, a sign of privilege. You're my favorite. I'm going to make you a coat of many colors to let everybody know you're my favorite. He was highly favored over the other 10 sons. 6 by Leah, 2 by her handmaid, 2 by the other handmaid. He was without doubt the favorite. Because he was the favorite, his other brothers hated him. They despised him. One day when he was sent out to check on them and the herds of sheep, his brothers saw him coming and said, "Let's kill him." Do you know who it was that kept them from killing Joseph? How many of you think it was Simeon? Reuben is the one that convinced the other brothers not to kill Joseph. He convinced them to put him in a deep pit, intending to go back, pull him out, send him home, back to Dad, where he'll be safe from his other brothers. It was Reuben that intended to bring him out of the pit. It was Reuben that intended to make certain that he got back safe and sound to Daddy. It was Reuben later that offered to kill his own 2 children when they needed corn. And the only corn was down in Egypt. And unbeknownst to them, Joseph was the second in command. And Jacob said, I will not let Benjamin go. And Reuben is the one that said, I personally will take responsibility for Benjamin. I personally will guarantee Benjamin's safe return. And if by some reason I don't bring Benjamin back safe and sound, you can kill my 2 children in exchange for Benjamin's life. My brother and I were 4 years apart. And yes, he's older than me. People keep saying now, you're older than your brother. No, he's 4 years older than me. And I didn't know it growing up. There were many times my brother went to rescue, went to battle for me. I was the geek. Everybody knows what a geek is. You know, if you had looked up, I had the black rimmed glasses, I had the pocket liner, I had my pens in the pocket liner, and I was a weird geek. And I got picked on a lot. I didn't know it until we were in college. He was married. I don't remember if I was yet or not, but I finally found out the kids that were picking on me, I mean, calling me names and all kinds of things, my brother went to them and said, lay off or you'll answer to me. I just know they quit picking on me. I had no clue why. There were other times when somebody would threaten me and my brother would go to them and say, you take him, you take me at the same time. He went to bat for me many times. That's what Reuben did for Joseph, and then later for Benjamin. Now, how does Reuben, what can we learn from Reuben? Our home life as a child can and often does has tremendous effect on our world view. We've been studying that on Wednesday nights. And that goes for when we were kids, but it also goes for our kids who are still young and impressionable and at home. When we first moved up here, I drove a school bus for several years for the public schools, which is one reason I will never put my kids in a public school. I experienced it every day. I remember one particular day, and this was frequent. This one just happens to stand out in my mind. Pulled up to the bus stop, opened the door. This 6-year-old boy, little kid, got on the bus. He was misbehaving, so I called him down. He cussed me out with words that I don't think most sailors have heard. He cussed me with every cuss word you could think of, He cussed me with I didn't even know half of the words. He cussed me up one side and cussed me down the other side. 6-year-old kid. Well, we got to school. I took him to the office, told the principal what happened, wrote him up. Next morning, I pull up to the bus stop, and the kid's daddy is waiting for me. And the daddy picked up where the son left off. The daddy used cuss words that, I'm telling you, I had never heard some of them. The daddy cussed me out, started up the well of the bus to attack me, and I was ready to literally kick him back out. And afterwards I thought, it's no secret where that 6-year-old boy learned to cuss so well. He learned it from Daddy. Oh, my kids won't pick up words I say. Yes, they will. They may not fully understand what those words mean, but they will pick them up and they will repeat them. And it's like, I don't know where my kid learned that word from. Well, it was real simple the next morning. The kid stood there as Daddy cussed me out worse than Junior did. I wrote him up too, but that was another story. I just don't know where Junior learned those things. I don't know where Reuben learned to have an illicit affair with one of his dad's wives. I can tell you where he probably learned it. Watching that dysfunctional family growing up. Daddy going from Rachel to Leah to Bilhah to, back and forth. No wonder when he got around 19 years of age, no wonder that he did what he had seen his daddy do for years. If you want to know what goes on in a home, watch the children. Watch the children. Children learn what they see and hear. By the way, that's also true in religious matters. If church is not important to mom and dad, it won't be important to the kids. If Bible reading's not important to mom and dad, it won't be to the kids. It's a proven fact. And you can find this in any number of places. It is a proven fact that children who are exposed to pornography at a young age are more likely to have a perverted view of the husband and wife relationship. I wonder if maybe that's why the LGBTQ plus and the whole transgender movement goes after kids in kindergarten, first, second, and third grades. They know kids are gullible. They know that kids are easily influenced. They know that kids don't have the knowledge, the willpower, or the understanding to resist what they're trying to teach them and do to them. They don't have enough experience to foresee the future and to know the troubles that lie ahead. Parents, grandparents, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of training up a child in the way he should go. I can't emphasize in the book of Deuteronomy over and over and over, God commands the children of Israel to teach their children God's word at a very young age. Well, I'm going to wait till they hit teens. You're 13 years too late. They have already formed their own opinion. They already have a worldview. They already have a distorted view of a husband-wife relationship. Because if you don't teach them, I guarantee you somebody will. We are now seeing kids that were surgically transformed from a boy to a girl or a girl to a boy, or at least so the doctors say. And after a few years, they will tell you it was the biggest mistake of their life. How much of Reuben's sin was because of the home life that he grew up in? Yes, it's certainly true. God forgives. If we confess our sin, He is faithful and just to forgive us and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. But that doesn't mean that there are no consequences. See, once a child is conceived, you can abort it, you can do anything you want to, but once that child is conceived, that child has an eternal soul in them. I get drunk. I go out here, get on 75, and I'm drunk, and I hit somebody, and I kill them. God can forgive me, no question. God can and will forgive if we confess our sin. But that doesn't mean that I won't be charged with vehicular homicide. Doesn't mean that I won't have to go to jail. Doesn't mean that my life won't be changed forever. But on the other hand, our past does not have to control our future. After Reuben's great sin, he tried every way possible to do what was right toward Joseph. He changed. Yes, a lot of people like to throw your sin up in your face and do everything they can to make you feel bad. But God was allowed Reuben, from that moment forward, Reuben tried his best to do what was right. What about us tonight? What are our kids and grandkids learning from us? growing up, well, not me, but when we had kids, my parents would occasionally watch our kids when we were in Tennessee, and it's like they are not to have chocolate after 6 o'clock. I'm just making that up. My mom and dad wouldn't give them chocolate if that was the last thing on earth. My father-in-law, no chocolate after 6 o'clock. Soon as we walked out the door, you don't have to listen to your mom and dad. You want chocolate? Here's chocolate. They learn really young which one they had to obey and which one they didn't have to obey. Your children, your grandchildren, they see and hear everything that goes on in that home. And by the way, statistically, how that young boy treats his future wife is often determined by how he sees dad treat his wife. If they see mom and dad fuss and fight and hit and slap and kick and bite, the odds are pretty high that's what they will do when they marry. Parents, your children, your grandchildren are watching you. Don't preach to them about the Bible and God when you don't practice it yourself, because they will see the difference.